Welcome to part 5 of Justin Baldoni's October 6th deposition. Before the break, we were talking about a scenario planning document that you have received from TAG. Do you recall that? Oh, sorry, almost. Try one more time. Before the break, we were talking about a scenario planning document that you received from TAG. Yes. Do you recall whether you ever received more than one version of that scenario planning document? I don't. Do you recall whether it was updated or revised at any point in time? I don't. Okay, to your best recollection, you only recall seeing one version of a scenario planning document. Is that correct? Yes. Do you remember that you didn't see any other versions, or you just don't remember one way or another? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't believe I saw a second version. Shaw, okay. After you were provided with a scenario planning document, describe for me the series of events to your recollection in terms of how you came to hire TAG. Shapiro, objection. Justin, forgive me, can you ask one more time? Shaw, sure. At some point after you received the scenario planning document for TAG, you ultimately hired TAG, right? The company did, yes. Yes. Is it your testimony that Wayfair hired TAG? Yes, I believe so. Okay, do you have an understanding of whether you personally also hired TAG? I don't think I personally hired anyone. Okay, and when Wayfair hired TAG, what was your understanding of what TAG was being brought on to do? My understanding was that TAG was being brought on to be crisis public relations representatives. To your understanding, was TAG given any instructions by you or by Wayfair in terms of how to proceed once you had hired them? I believe so. I believe that Jamie was in communication with them. And do you know what those instructions were? I can only speak to the instructions that I gave Jamie or at any time spoke to Jen or on the calls, which was to plan and to just try to get good press out there for the movie. How involved were you personally in discussing with anyone at TAG the type of PR strategy you all should be employing? I don't know. I think I had ideas. I'm not sure how many conversations were happening versus what ideas I was sharing. I was kind of in and out. Do you have any recollection of any ideas you had that you shared with TAG? I mean, I really wanted to focus not just TAG, but also Jennifer Abel. I really wanted to focus on amplifying the voices of survivors. I wanted to focus on the DV. I wanted to focus on the movie and not all the speculation and drama. Did you personally ever have any conversations with Stephanie Jones about the instructions the Wayfarer was giving TAG in terms of how to proceed? I don't think I had any real conversation with Stephanie Jones outside of texting through July and August. Do you recall ever communicating with Stephanie Jones, whether on text or in conversation, about the instructions the Wayfarer had given TAG about how to proceed? I don't believe so. My memory of texts with Stephanie Jones were focused on letting her know that I was not part of this decision to hire anybody. I wanted to stay out of it. It was too much for me. And I know she sent me a really beautiful message of love and support before the premiere. That's my memory of talking with Stephanie. Okay, I think she was on vacation somewhere. Do you have any understanding of whether anyone at Wayfair had communications, texts, conversations with Stephanie Jones about what Wayfair was instructing TAG to do as a crisis PR? I don't know. Shaw. Okay, going to show you a document marked Exhibit 17. Exhibit 17 marked for identification. JB, should I get rid of this? Shaw, yes, thank you. It's a text thread from between Henny Grace, who is you, Jennifer Abel, Justin Baldoni, I think that's it. So this looks like a text thread between you and Jennifer Abel. Uh-huh. On August 5th, 2024, with a Bates stamp, Baldoni several zeros, 18710. Do you see this? I do. Okay, and Jennifer Abel, do you recall this text thread? Vaguely, but I know this was in the New York Times from what I was told. Did you ever read the New York Times article? I did not. How did you come to learn about it? The New York Times article? Uh-huh. I would say it felt like minutes after I received an email from who I believe was Mr. Gottlieb. I got an email from the New York Times saying they were running a story the next morning. And then the next morning, there were quite a lot of text messages from people worried about me and concerned. So that's how I learned about it. If you never read the New York Times article, do you have any basis to say whether or not anything contained in it was true or untrue? Shapiro, objection. Justin, my understanding of the New York Times article was that it was taken from the CRD complaint, and I was never interviewed or asked for my opinion or my side of the story. So from the few sentences and the headline, that's what I was able to gather. Shaw, what you were able to gather? That the information they got was from Miss Lively's CRD complaint, but not from anyone that came from me or my side of the story, and I would very much disagree with the things that Miss Lively put in her CRD complaint as being untrue. Okay, but sitting here today, can you think of a statement or portion of the New York Times article itself that you could identify as being true or untrue? I believe that a New York Times article insinuated that I had launched a smear campaign against Miss Lively, which is completely untrue. I believe it said that I sexually harassed Miss Lively, which is also very untrue. So there's two untrue statements. And apart from those two statements or concepts as contained in the New York Times article, is there anything else that was contained in the New York Times article that's sitting here today you could identify as either true or untrue? Justin, I would be happy to read it while we're sitting here and go through all the things that I feel are untrue, but I don't know that that would be the best use of our time. I agree with you. It would not be. So based on what you know about it today, can you identify any other statement or portion of that article that you can identify as true or untrue? I can't comment on the rest of the article at this time because you don't know what it said, because I need to go through it to tell you what I think is true and untrue. Okay, if you look at the document, Jennifer Abel starts by saying, as read, Sony's having a hard time with the word friction. They think it will be taken out as clickbait. Do you see that? Yes. Do you have an understanding as to what she was referring to there? I believe I do. What is that understanding? I believe in an interview I spoke that every set has friction, but oftentimes that friction ends up being something that is great for the film, and I think that's what she was referring to. And did you understand that Sony did not like the use of the word friction? I believe that's what Ms. Abel was telling me in this text. Okay, did you have an understanding around this time that Sony had other disagreements with things that you had said in interviews promoting the film? I don't know about disagreements. I know that there was always a conversation around how much of the film should be promoted, using the word survivor or talking about domestic violence, and that had been a multi-year conversation. And you thought more of that content should be used in promoting the film, and Sony wanted less of that content to be used. Is that right? Shapiro, objection. Sony had initial apprehension about making it an issue movie, and I tried to explain to them that you cannot run from the fact that this is an issue movie, and this was the very reason I was making the movie. And it would be a disservice to all the people whose lives were changed from the film for us to pretend like that's not what the movie's about. Shaw, did Sony have ultimate approval over the film's marketing plan? I need to know what you mean by approval. Was Sony deeply involved in conversations with Wayfarer and the cast about the film's marketing plan? I believe there were many conversations that Sony was having about the marketing plan. They were in charge of marketing. They were the company that was paying for the marketing of the movie. Okay, then if you go back to this document, yes, Jennifer Abel says, as read, they obviously don't know about our strategy, but let's stick to the words of challenge. Do you see that? Yes. What is your understanding of what she means when she says they obviously don't know about our strategy? I think our strategy was to ensure that we were only saying positive things and not drawing any attention to what was very clearly at that time an intentional plan to draw attention to friction, if you will. An intentional plan by whom? I can only imagine Miss Lively. And then you send Miss Abel a text message where you said, as read, this is what we would need. Yes. And you attach a screenshot of a post about Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women. Do you see that? Yes. What did you mean by this is what we would need? So I believe at that time we were going through scenario planning. And like any plan, you have scenario A, scenario B, and C and D. What if this happens or this happens or this happens? And I think I'd seen this post and I resonated with the word bullying. And I sent it to Jen saying in the event that Miss Lively came out and said lies about me, then we would need to come forward with the truth. And it was your suggestion that you would come forward with allegation that Miss Lively was a bully. It was my understanding that I would come forward with what my truth was, and I felt very bullied. Was it your intention to suggest that you should be coming forward with statements that Miss Lively was a bully to other women? No, this had nothing to do with other women. This was just what this article was about. And the story, by its own words, is about Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women, right? Yes, I see that. Okay, and it was your suggestion that in some scenario where Miss Lively was to come forward with what you felt were lies about you, you would want to come forward in the press with allegations like those contained in the post you sent. Shapiro, objection. Justin, no, not exactly. So how would you correct that? So if Miss Lively were to come forward with lies about me, then I would want to come forward with my truth. So it's about me and my experience. I don't know what this article was about. I actually didn't read it. I saw it. I saw the word bullying. At that time, I felt very bullied and scared and very alone. And we were planning for all the various things that could happen. That's why I said would as the operative word. This was a part of a scenario planning document, and the hope was that the movie was going to come out and everything was going to be fine and everyone was going to have success and we would never need anything. And that's the truth. Is it your testimony that when you saw and sent this post to Jen Abel, you saw the word history of bullying, but you did not continue to read where it said many women? Shapiro, objection. Justin, this has nothing to do with women. I don't know if Miss Lively has bullied other women. Shaw, did you read any press coverage that came out in August of 2024 that did accuse Miss Lively of bullying other women? Later on, I did. Women, including Shashti Flaw, I believe. I learned about that name, yes. Okay, and women, including Leighton Meester from Gossip Girl? Yes. I didn't read anything about her being a bully to Leighton Meester. Okay, are you aware that the article that Brianna Butler Coslow testified under oath in this case that she leaked and helped to plant in the Daily Mail about Miss Lively contained allegations that Miss Lively had bullied Shasti Flaw and had bullied Leighton Meester? Shapira, objection. Justin, I was unaware of that. I was also unaware that she bullied Leighton Meester. And you were unaware of that, even though that you here suggested to Jen Abel that what you would need in event that Miss Lively disclosed anything negative about you is articles similar to this one that says Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women. Shapiro, objection. Justin, I disagree with the way that question was phrased. Shaw, do you think that's just a coincidence? Shapiro, objection. Justin, that what is? Shaw, that you suggested that you would need articles about similar to Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women, and then tag the company that you employed as crisis PR did in fact plant an article about Blake Lively bullying other women. Shapiro, objection. Justin, so what is the question? Shaw, the question is, do you think that's a coincidence? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't think it's a coincidence that I felt bullied and then it's seen the internet dug up true stories. I don't think it's a coincidence that I felt bullied and then it seems the internet dug up true stories of how Miss Lively bullied other people. So it just shows that I wasn't the only one who was bullied. Shaw, when you say the internet dug up stories, what do you mean by that? It seemed like people came forward with their own experiences of being bullied to the extent that I never had to. Okay, how does this fit in with the strategy that you were promoting with Miss Abel and tag about promoting positive coverage of the film? How does this fit in? Uh-huh. This is part of a, like I said earlier, a what happens if scenario. So if positive doesn't work, then you would move on to something like this? Objection. Justin, if positive doesn't work, how? Shaw, what do you mean when you say this is part of a what happens if scenario? Justin, as I testified earlier, if Miss Lively were to capitalize on her threats that her and Mr. Reynolds made through her agent to my agent to me and plant negative stories, which I was told she already was doing, such as I'm part of a cult or that I'm a predator, and continue to come forward with lies, then we would have to have some sort of plan. As they are Hollywood titans, and I'm very clearly a nobody as it relates, or at least what they feel I am, or what my former agency thought of me, as I was also dropped very quickly per the request. So we need some sort of plan if someone is attacking you with big guns and missiles and dropping bombs on you. In our day and age, you can't just die. I have a family I have to protect. I have a company that I started. So we were planning for what would happen if she were to attack me and to lie about me and hurt my reputations. That's all it was. And under the text where you send Jen Abel the screenshot of the article about Hailey Bieber, Jen Abel responds, as read, yes, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on the break about what we discussed last night for social and digital. And then she says, focus on Reddit, TikTok, IG. Do you see that? I do. Okay, she mentions what we discussed last night for social and digital. Is that a discussion that you were a part of? I have honestly have no idea what she's talking about here, so I don't think I was a part of that call. I don't think she's inferring that her and I discussed anything. Did you and she discuss anything about this? Not that, no, not like that. I don't remember any conversation with Jen about this. Do you recall any conversation with Jen or Melissa about social or digital strategy? No, I was very hard to reach during this time. Most of my communication was via text, which the world has. Do you understand what the words social and digital mean in that context? I would have assumed they mean the same thing, so I don't know. I still don't know the difference between social and digital because social is inherently digital, so I don't know. Do you understand that social means social media? Yes. Okay, on the internet. Hence, it's digital, which is what I meant, is what I said. Like, social media is digital, so I don't know what digital is. Did you understand that social and digital included things like Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram? I didn't know anything about Reddit, but I would assume the TikTok and Instagram. Okay, do you recall ever having a conversation with either Jen or Melissa after you sent this Hailey Bieber post where you explained to them that you didn't mean planting stories about Blake bullying other women? You meant coming forward with stories about Blake bullying you? Shapiro, objection. I don't remember any conversation. I know Jen and I were together doing press somewhere around this time, and I know Jen knew it was very clear that I wanted to do nothing that would harm Miss Lively or this film, and that the only times we would do anything is if we were attacked, and we were attacked, and we still didn't do anything. Shaw, okay, but do you recall ever having any conversation with either Jen or Melissa where you explained to them, when I sent you this post about Haley Bieber, I wasn't suggesting stories about Blake bullying other women. I was suggesting coming forward with my experience about Blake bullying me. Shapiro, objection. Did you ever explain that to them? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I think it was very clear in my relationship with Jen that she knew exactly what I meant when I sent this, and that there was never a directive to do anything, so I would be very surprised if anything was actually done. Shaw, but do you recall having any conversations or communications with her or Melissa where you expressed that? Shapiro, objection. Justin, that specific thing? Shaw, yes. I don't have any specific recollections of that. Okay, when Jen says, as read, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on the break, about what we discussed last night for social and digital. Do you have any understanding about what was the substance of Jen's conversation with Melissa on this topic? I wasn't on the call, so I don't know. Is this the only idea that you ever expressed to either Jen or Melissa or anyone at TAG about how you might combat stories that Blake and Ryan might come forward with what you believed were lies? Shapiro, objection. I don't know. Justin, I don't know. I'm not sure. Shaw, do you recall discussing the potential around stories that Blake and Ryan crossed the picket line or otherwise violated the writer's strike by rewriting certain scenes in the movie? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I think I do, yes. Shaw, okay, do you recall communicating to Jen and Melissa that one idea might be flipping the narrative on Ryan to make it seem like when he rewrote the rooftop scene in the movie, he was mansplaining how to write a script to a female scriptwriter? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't remember exactly what you said, no. Shaw, how do you remember it? I remember that an article came out, or essentially was like a source said that Ryan thought the script was a disaster and that he had to save it. So they were putting out articles that were basically saying that the film was a mess and he had to come in and save it. And I believe we had learned at the premiere, at least I had learned, the following day I was doing an interview and I was told that Miss Lively said that Mr. Reynolds wrote the rooftop scene, which was news to me as the director. And in the moment, instead of saying that didn't happen to the people person, I just said how great Ryan was. I didn't want to say anything to contradict that, but there was already an existing narrative that was out there. And so I do remember passing on a message from my partner who had suggested something to that effect, because essentially, if the script was a mess, then he would be saying that the writer, who was a female, who worked her off for years on this to get it right, clearly didn't know what she was doing, which I completely disagreed with. So flipping a narrative was meant an existing narrative that was already being put out by, I would say, the other side. What did the fact that the writer was a female have anything to do with any of that? Well, again, I was passing on a text message from my business partner who was suggesting flipping the narrative. Before we leave this Exhibit 17, I may have asked you this before, but for the record, do you have any recollection of discussing any of this scenario planning that was going on that we were just talking about with Stephanie Jones? I don't have any recollection of talking with Stephanie Jones about scenario planning. Okay, this one, please. Are you aware of whether anyone at Wayfarer ever had any conversations with Stephanie Jones about the type of scenario planning that you were discussing with Jen Abel and Tag? I'm unaware. Okay, I'm handing you what's been marked as Exhibit 18. It's a text thread between you, Melissa, and Jen Abel dated August 15, 2024. Bates stamped Nathan _ several zeros 4562. Is this the idea from your partner, Steve Sarwitz, about flipping the narrative that you were testifying discussing flipping the narrative about? Can I have a second to read it, please? Of course. Okay. So is this the substance of the idea that you were talking about that came from your partner, Steve Sarwitz, about flipping the script? Yes. And that included flipping the script from Ryan saying, as read, script was a disaster and he saved the movie, to something about Ryan claiming the female hired was a feminist writer, didn't know how to tackle a female film, etc. Do you see that? Yes, this idea that this was a female writer in a female film and that was what Ryan Reynolds was saying was essentially misogynistic. Did that come from Steve Sarwitz? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I think I said here that my partner Steve had asked about this, so I was passing that along. Shaw, so this idea is something about Ryan claiming the female hired was a feminist writer, didn't know how to tackle a female film, etc., came from Steve? That was what was passed on to me. Did you use any judgment about whether or not that was a good idea before you passed it along? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I think it's implied in him saying that the script was a disaster, so I just passed it along. I didn't disagree with him. You didn't disagree with Mr. Sarwitz's idea? Is that what you mean? I didn't disagree with what Mr. Sarowitz was saying in terms of what Ryan was inferring when he called the script a disaster, meaning that Ryan was essentially acting misogynistically. Shapiro, objection. Justin, one could infer if he's saying the script was a disaster. Shaw, and one could infer that simply from the fact that it was a female writer who wrote the script, and a female author, female writer, and yeah. Did you rewrite any portions of the script that the female scriptwriter wrote? Did I rewrite any portions of the script? Along with Miss Lively, I did, yes. Do you think that it can be inferred from that you were acting misogynistic because it was a female book author and female scriptwriter, and you were a man who was tinkering with that script? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I wish I didn't tinker with a script, but I had no choice. Shaw, okay, then he goes on to say, as read, and the fact that they saved the script from what they think is a disaster after we had a greenlit script and was strike basically implies they were scabs. Do you see that? Yes. And then if you flip the page, you write, as read, which we should 100% lead them to. Do you see that? Yes. That last part, which we should 100% lead them to. Was that your idea, or were you still relaying what Steve meant? I don't know. When you say which we should 100% lead them to, do you mean lead reporters to? I actually don't know what I mean here. Shaw, what is your best guess? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't know. Shaw, no idea? I don't know what I meant. Okay, then you write, as read, it's a man coming in to say this female writer sucks and I need to save it. Let him drown in his own pool. Do you see that? Yes. Is that the sum and substance of the idea that you were relating? Which part, the pool part or the other part? All of it. It seems to be that way, yes. In other words, this is something that he created, like he came out with a story about this in the first place. This was not something that we came out with and wanted to talk about. Okay, and are you essentially saying here that because he came out with a story, let's flip it against him and make him look like a misogynist? I think those are your words. I'm asking if you agree with that interpretation and that idea. I don't believe I do. You don't think that the idea that Mr. Sarowitz was relaying was because they came out with a story, let's flip it against them and essentially make Ryan look like a misogynist? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't believe we had to make Ryan look like a misogynist. Shaw, that wasn't my question. Shapiro, objection. Justin, that was my answer. Okay, do you disagree with the interpretation that the idea that Mr. Sarowitz was relaying was because Ryan had come out with a story about rewriting that scene? You should use his words against him and make him look like a misogynist? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I disagree with what you said because I don't know of a story that came out about Ryan rewriting a scene. Shaw, what basis did you have to believe at that time that Ryan Reynolds had actually said the things that were being reported about here that you're discussing? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I'm not sure. Shaw, you can't remember what basis you had to think that he actually said these things. I believe there were many articles that were coming out about how he saved the movie. Do you believe that the press is always accurate? Shapiro, objection. Justin, are you asking me now or then? Shaw, both. I think as I sit here today, the press is very inaccurate, oftentimes. I think at that time I might have had a more optimistic view of the press. Did you essentially take those articles at their word? I don't know. Okay, other than the reporting that was going on at the time about what Mr. Reynolds or Miss Lively had said about this, do you have any other basis to understand what they had actually said? I'm not sure. Okay, was this also part of the scenario planning that you were discussing? I am unsure. How does flipping the narrative in the way that is suggested here reconcile with a view that you should be putting out any positive stories? Because it has to do with a defensive measure. So if we're talking about something that was an offensive measure, then flipping an existing narrative would not be us doing anything offensively. It would be us defending. And again, this was me passing something on. Do you recall testifying earlier about whether Melissa Nathan ever encouraged you to leave Jonesworks with Jen Abel when Jen Abel left? At this point, I remember some of that, and I would love for you to refresh my memory more. Sure. Am I passing this one on? Yes, thank you. I'm handing you what has been marked as Exhibit 19 as a text thread between Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel, dated August 19th, 2024, and I just want you to read the first page if you will. You can read the rest of it, but I'm just going to ask you about the first page. Exhibit 19 marked for identification. Okay, and at the top, Melissa writes, as read, just had a nice conversation with Justin, just him and me, and I explained to him a few things. And then she goes on to explain what she explained to you. And then she says, as read, I ended it with, and I'm just going to step out of line before I go to bed and tell you, Jen is amazing. She's so loyal. She loves you so much. And you have to go with her. And he was like, oh my God, of course I'm going with her. Do you see that? I do. Do you remember having that conversation with Melissa Nathan? Very vaguely. What do you remember about that conversation? I remember it was mostly about like, I was like, she had a conversation with Leslie Sloan, which I found shocking because I just found it very surprising. And she said it was actually, I think she said it was a nice conversation. And then I just remember a brief exchange at the very end, but I wouldn't characterize it the way she is saying it. How do you remember that part differently? I remember her saying how much Jen cares about me, but I don't remember her ever saying you have to go with her or egging me on or anything like that because I was already planning on following her wherever she was going. So there was no like this, if I made this to me looks like more of what I've seen you show me, which is like an exaggeration or inflation of conversations. Maybe her trying to like show Jen she has her back. I don't know, but that wasn't what the conversation was exactly. Okay, we discussed this a little bit earlier, but what was behind your decision to leave with Jen Abel when Jen left Jonesworks? Shapiro, objection. Justin, it wasn't any one thing. I think the major thing, it would have been like if I was at William Morris, maybe I should use a different agency. If I was at an agency and I had an agent for 4 years or 5 years, and I talked to that agent every day, and that agent was soliciting work for me, and that agent called me and said, hey, I'm going to a different agency, my loyalty would be with the agent that I had built the relationship with versus the agency. And that's how I view the situation with Jen and Stephanie Jones. Even if I had a great relationship with the owner of the agency, my day-to-day relationship was with Jen Abel. And is what you just relayed to me the reason that you personally decided to go with Jen Abel when she left Jonesworks? Yes. And is what you just relayed to me consistent with the reason that you, Jamie, Heath, and Tara Hanks collectively made to go with Jen Abel when she left Jonesworks? I think that's the biggest reason. I think we were, regardless of anything that was happening with the movie or not with the movie, if there would have been no movie, I think that would have been the decision. I don't understand that answer. What do you mean by that? Maybe it's because I didn't understand the question. Sure, you said that you discussed with Jamie Heath and Tara Hanks this conversation around whether you personally, and Wayfarer, the studio, should go with Jen Abel as your publicist. Yes. When she left Jonesworks, right? Yes. Shapiro, objection. Shaw, and the three of you collectively made a decision around what to do, right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, yes. Shaw, Shaw, is what you just described to me that you felt, a loyalty to your relationship with Jen as your agent versus the owner of the agency? I don't know if I would. Shapiro, objection. Justin, characterize it as a loyalty. Shaw, okay, sure. Did you and Jamie and Tara ever discuss any other reason to go with Jen Abel when she left Jonesworks other than what you just described to me? I think what I just described to you is the majority of the reason. I think that there were other micro reasons, but that wasn't the main reason. What were the other micro reasons? It was what we talked about earlier. Just a feeling I got when I had spoken to Mrs. Jones, during that time with the article and all of that was going on. Also, just I didn't speak to her very much. Jen was really my point person, or Matthew. It would be like if I was your client, you're a wonderful lawyer, and you've been with me. I'd been your client for 4 years, and you left your firm to join Mr. Friedman, and your firm might be great, but I would want to go with you. I mean, that was really the decision. Okay, is it fair to say that your working relationship with Jen never really changed or was interrupted when she left Jonesworks? Shapiro, objection. Justin, I don't know how to answer that question. Shaw, okay, you continued to work with Jen Abel as your publicist the day after she left Jonesworks, right? And in the week after she left Jonesworks, in the month she left Jonesworks. Shapiro, objection. Justin, my recollection of her leaving Jonesworks was her phone being confiscated and her being met with like security and an attorney, and she had been like texting me from like another number and trying to get her phone. So from that point on, I know we were still dealing with the premiere. We continued to work together, but there was a gap when she didn't have a phone, and I think she was going through a lot. Shaw, but that gap was a matter of hours or a day. Is that right? Shapiro, objection. Justin, probably, but I believe that if my memory serves me correct, and I could be wrong, I was told that she would be staying on with me in Wayfarer until the end of the press cycle. There's like a date, and I believe this incident happened still while we were within that date. So it was my understanding that she was fulfilling her promise to us. Shaw, did you ever feel like she was ever unavailable to you as a publicist during this period of time? I'm not sure that's something I thought about. Is she still your publicist? I think so. Is she currently Wayfair's publicist? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what we're paying her if I don't know any of those details. Did you have anything to do with any contractual relationship between Jennifer Abel or her agency RWA and Wayfair or you yourself personally? No. Okay. Shapiro, counsel, can we take a break? Shaw, sure. Shapiro, 10 minutes? Shaw, yeah. Videographer, we are going off the record. The time is 5:41 p.m. The videographer, we're back on the record. The time is 6:11 p.m. See you for part 6.